writes, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai, which means Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai. And of course, the Mishnah is talking about this week's Torah portion, where Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai. But the question is, Mount Sinai was the location. Moses didn't receive the Torah from Mount Sinai. Moses received it from God. So why doesn't the Mishnah say Moshe received the Torah from Hashem, from God? Why does it say from Sinai? And our Rabbi is teaching us a very fundamental lesson. It says that why did God choose Mount Sinai to give the Torah upon it? It says the Medrash that all the mountains came and said, I'm the biggest, I'm the greatest, I'm the strongest mountain, I'm the largest mountain, I'm the most beautiful mountain, I am the widest mountain, the Torah should be given on me. And God said, no, I'm going to give the Torah on Mount Sinai, because Mount Sinai was the humblest mountain, it was the smallest mountain. It didn't come to proclaim its own greatness. And that's the same reason why God chose Moshe Rabbeinu to be the one to deliver the Torah to the Jewish people, because the Torah tells us that the man Moses was the humblest person on the face of the earth. And what the Torah is teaching us is that Moses received the Torah from Sinai, from the trait and the quality of Sinai, which is humility. And what the Torah is teaching us is that in order to receive the Torah, each and every one of us, in order to absorb its lessons, in order to be influenced properly and act according to the dictates of the Torah, we must first have the trait of humility. Humility is the vessel which allows us to be recipients of the Torah. And the question is, what is it about humility that is so important that the very foundation of the Torah is the trait of humility? And we know that scientists, social scientists, have studied the trait of humility, and they found 4 primary benefits to the trait of humility on a man and a woman's life. The first benefit of humility is that it helps us resolve conflicts. In other words, humility is when we are other-oriented, versus egotism and narcissism is when we are self-oriented. And therefore, when people are under strenuous relationships, in moments of conflict, just like you could determine someone's courage in a moment of danger, in a moment of interpersonal relationship conflicts, whether it's husbands and wives or friends or neighbors or family members, that's where the trait of humility can be tested and tried and determined. If a person is willing to forgive and overlook hurt and resolve differences and acknowledge their wrongdoing, that is the trait of humility that brings the repairing of relationships. The second benefit of humility is that it fosters commitment. It creates a we mentality versus an I mentality. Why? Because people are willing to be devoted to people who are humble. When you see someone's egotistical and self-centered, you don't want to commit to that person. And therefore, humility actually fosters social relationships and social bonds. The third benefit of humility is that we all know we live in a competitive world. And so the competitiveness could have wear and tear on relationships. So just like your car needs oil to smoothen out and make sure there's no breakdown in the engines, because a well-oiled machine functions properly, humility is the oil that allows the competitiveness of life not to have negative effects on our relationships. It oils the wear and tear of our relationships so that despite our competitiveness, which we see as a positive trait to accomplish great things, it allows us to maintain healthy relationships. And finally, the fourth benefit, believe it or not, scientists, social scientists show, is that people who have humility live healthier and longer lives. Why? Because social friction creates a lot of stress and pain in our lives. Stress has a toll on our health. And therefore, people who have humility have less stress and anxiety in their lives because they get along better with others, starting with their family members, of course, have better marriages, better relationships with their children, with their parents, with others, and therefore they actually live healthier and longer lives. And this is what the Torah is telling us. All the commandments in the 10 Commandments, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't hurt people, don't bear false witness, don't be envious of others. It all requires the vessel and the foundation of Sinai, humility, because without humility, you won't be able to practice properly all of these commandments in the Torah. To live a Torah life and to observe God's commandments, you must first have the trait of humility, which is crucial to practicing the values, principles, and ideals of Judaism. There's this true story about a great rabbi in Jerusalem. His name is Rabbi Kanevsky. Rabbi Kanevsky, one of the leading scholars amongst the Jewish people. And there was once a little bar mitzvah taking place in a synagogue in Jerusalem. And during the Kiddush, in walked Rabbi Kanevsky. Everyone was shocked to see this giant of the generation coming to this bar mitzvah. And people started to ask, is he related? What's his connection to this bar mitzvah? Nobody knew he was coming. Even the family of the bar mitzvah was shocked to see him. He came, sat down next to the bar mitzvah boy, said l'chaim, wished everyone mazel tov, and then he spoke quietly to the bar mitzvah boy for a few moments, wished everyone mazel tov, and left. Afterwards, everyone asked the bar mitzvah boy, what did he say to you? The mitzvah boy related the following story. He said, when I was 9 years old, I was once praying in a synagogue with Rabbi Kanevsky, and I happened to be using a large print prayer book, Siddur. Rabbi Kanevsky thought I was studying Talmud from a large volume. So he came over to me and he reprimanded me. And he said, you know, there's a time to pray and there's a time to study. Now's the time to pray. And I showed him that I wasn't studying Talmud. I was actually praying from a large print Siddur. Chaim Kanevsky apologized to me. Today he showed up at my bar mitzvah and he said that even though you forgave me when you were 9 years old, as a child, your actions don't have permanence. You need to be an adult to properly forgive somebody. So I waited for your bar mitzvah and I'm coming back to ask you for forgiveness for misjudging you improperly, and please forgive me for not judging you favorably, for thinking negatively about you and criticizing you unjustly. Imagine a leading giant rabbi scholar of the generation that thousands flock to for advice comes to ask a 13-year-old boy for forgiveness for something he did to him when he was 9 years old. That's the trait of humility that produces giants of Torah and giants of character and personality, a trait that we should all work on inculcating, because as the Mishnah says, Moses received the Torah from Sinai. Yes, he received it from God, but the reason he received it was because Moses possessed the most important trait of all, the trait of humility. Have a wonderful day.